So I hope that sort of roughly explains what we're doing. And if anybody's got any questions, feel free to ask them. A lot of the writing we did was collaborative, as in not necessarily everybody sitting around a piece of paper, which we always found rarely works, but actually collaborative, as in you have a meeting, you talk about things, you come up with an idea, and then somebody's sent off to do it. And I've always really liked that way of working, where you get lots of people's ideas all up and down, and these meetings can go on for hours, but eventually you reach a rough idea of what you want to do, and then one person goes off and does it, having the sort of consensus and having the sort of responsibility that everybody else has given them. Which I think is a really, it worked for us anyway, as a collective. We always worked as a collective.
And would that be focused around one album, would it? I mean, to be an album would be the kind of goal.
Let's write an album about this subject, and we'd all have a meeting, come up with ideas, and then people would go off and do their own thing. And in terms of music, like when we first went to a recording studio, we thought, yes, we're democratic and we're a collective, let's all be in the studio and we'll all decide how it should sound. And that doesn't work, because you all have different versions of how things should sound, and everybody's ears are different, and you will always get the bass player wanting the bass slightly louder. And so we would have, we would gather and work out who was good at having ears for everybody, and then they'd go off and try and do that. Any other questions?
The Dada sensibility, perhaps. I think that there's that whole area of a sort of playfulness of graphics, where sort of type. I mean, like you were saying about logos, the Chumbawamba will always change the typeface of the name, etc. So I think anybody that's within that experimental world of how graphics work, I think is probably worth thinking of.
And I don't know if you know, there's an artist called Marcel Duchamp he's always figured in the band as a sort of hero of ours, because he was a great artist and a great craftsman and a great draftsman, and he would just change what he did overnight, because he thought it was really important to upset the establishment. So when people thought that he was a certain kind of painter, he would become another kind of painter. To the extent where he went into a plumbing shop in New York and bought a men's urinal and put it into an art show. This is in about mid-1920s, and signed it and said, "This is my art." And the amount of shock that produced, he loved. He just thought, "This is great. This is what my art's about getting conversation and debate and people talking about it, having to think about it. Is it art? Is it not?" And all that sort of thing. So yeah, we've always been really influenced by him.
Isn't there an album of yours called Ready Made?
There is, yeah.
Would you be willing to sing it up?
I can't play it on the ukulele, unfortunately. Otherwise, if I had my other guitar, I would have done. But sorry about that. I thought both he and us thought it would be really interesting, because we were selling records to sort of lefty political pop audience, and he was selling his books to a very literate lefty, political audience. And so we thought it'd be really good if one of his speeches, which he's taught, and one side of a music from us could be put together and sold together. And it sold quite well, and we just thought it was really interesting, because half of the people would have thought, "What's this other rubbish on it?" and would have had to have a listen to it. So yeah, when we first started, we decided that, because when we first started, it was during the time of Margaret Thatcher being in power and the miners' strike and things like that. And so we were very poor-faced, and we thought we had to be really serious about everything. And that lasted about a year, playing live. And then we thought, this is stupid, because we're very serious and our music's serious, and then we go off stage and we just sort of take the piss out of each other and play practical jokes, and we're daft, and that has to be part of the music. So we just changed. We said, let's write music that's, instead of, if you're going to write about something bad, then it's good to try and write it in a positive way and give it a positive twist. Because when we were looking for a name, we used to. There was a silkscreen printing workshop in Leeds at the time. It was like an unemployed centre, and we literally went in and we were looking for a name, and we didn't want to be called a name that meant that you could tell what kind of band it was. So we thought, well, because we got a jumble of letters. We were making a silk screen, and we literally cut them out and put letters together, and thought, yeah, that looks all right. And that was for our very first gig in Leeds, and we weren't called that until the first gig. So
was it the Dum Dum Boys then, or was that?
We were Dum Dum Boys
You were
before
Dum
that,
Dum,
yeah, named after an Iggy Pop song.
Future's a bit unknown, isn't
Yeah,
it?
yeah, we don't know. No.
Yeah.
We had this plan without really sort of thinking what we were going to do after it. But we wanted it to be a positive thing ending.
Yeah.
So we had a really nice time finishing it.
Yeah.
And then who knows what happens next. So, yeah.
Okay. Right, well, thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks everyone.
And if anybody does want to ask any questions in person, I'm sure you can come up. So thanks very much to Boff and Phil.